Say the Metavision model is a combination of the influence of modern psychological practice, such as process-oriented psychology, which has grown out of the depth psychology of Jung, the spiritual science and wisdom of Steiner, and from my point of view, Chinese medicine, understanding Chinese medicine. So these are very different influences, and different people have different influences on them. But this is a sort of influence that seems to address the different aspects of what's needed for therapy today. And what I've done is apply these and other things to my practice, and then seen what has really been effective in clinical practice. So the Metavision model has arisen directly out of clinical experience, over many years of clinical experience, and then trying to distill it, and teaching at Metavision, distilling down the essence of what we're covering. So it's in a process of becoming too, like many things, everything today. So the Metavision model is a way of healing and attention that focuses on the complexity of the living human being in a process of becoming. It's really important. It's not something static. It's not something fixed. This model has a clear structure which supports exploration of a complexity and depth that's quite amazing, that it has in it this sense of forward direction, forward movement. This is very like and influenced by the notion of in quantum physics that there's as people talk about an arrow of time that has been discovered in and reflected upon in quantum physics, that there's this and teleological movement towards something, and it's not the something, the thing that we're so used to thinking about, but actually the sense that everything is moving towards and away from. In quantum physics, they talk about entropy and negentropy. It's a way of describing this process. So the Metavision model looks very closely at the human being and sees that it is a completely interconnected entity of mind, body, emotions, in constant interaction and in mutual influence, both internally with each part and externally with the environment. It's very important. There's this constant interaction, like a lemniscate, like this figure 8, that's moving between the physical body, the emotional and soul body, and the mental and spiritual body. These parts don't have separate causes they're not separate, and they don't have separate causes in finding disharmony. And they don't have separate solutions. You can't separate these out. And this is what happens so often in both medicine and a lot of psychology practice today. Being aware of the communication between body sensations, feelings and thoughts gives meaning and purpose to the unfolding life journey. And that is a big part of the role of the therapist. The unfolding life journey and the meaning of whatever is arising at the moment. That there's some sort of rightness about it and it's going somewhere. And that we're on this mysterious journey with the other person, and all we're doing is facilitating their process through seeing the interconnection of all these parts.
It's liberating, really.
It's very liberating. And it sees all sorts of symptoms and discomfort and upsets as being an important part of the journey. Not something to be got rid of, but something to be listened to, engaged with, and learned from.
And so to have that thought and that meaning to something then that's helpful as a therapist too, to know that's there's meaning to somebody's process.
Absolutely, and your own.
And your own. Oh, your own, so important.
Yes, and as you hold this awareness, you get closer to your own essential patterns, which is very liberating and exciting too. You come to know your own nature more deeply, and you become more congruent with greater flow and meaning. And you become more present to your own life. So, what is the role of the healer or the facilitator? Is as a participant, like a midwife or a person who's just journeying with and holding a crucible for the unfolding process of another, or a group or event. This can be applied to a wide range of situations, so you can apply it to the current situation we're in of chaos and pandemic and climate change and all sorts of issues that are arising in very uncomfortable ways at the moment. Actually, it's a very exciting time to be alive and to be dealing with these things and to see it through this lens. That's what we're trying to really cultivate at Metavision, seeing through a holistic, process-oriented lens.
Say more about it being exciting, can you?
Oh, well, what did the Chinese say? May you live in interesting times. Why? Because it brings you alive. It allows, you're wrestling with something, and it's something big, and it takes all of us, and it takes individually all of who we are, but then our interaction with others becomes really important too. If we are coming with this perception, we don't know where it's going. We don't know. I mean, how much of a wake-up call is it when you're standing right on the edge of something? Wow.
Yeah.
You have to bring every part of yourself to it. That's why it's exciting. And being in this space with another in a therapeutic environment is a huge privilege. And if you hold that space and know that within that space there's a whole lot of unseen forces at work, like the energy between the wisdom of the universal consciousness that all peoples in all times have known's been there, but we've disconnected from. And I think that's a big part of the discomfort that a lot of people are feeling, and that a lot of people are seeking to connect with again.
So do you think that's what the fear comes from?
Yeah, absolutely, a lot of fear. And in fact, the biggest challenge today is dealing with fear.
Yeah, because you said these are exciting times, but there's so many people that have fear around these times.
Yes, and what does fear do? Grips you up, tightens you up, doesn't allow you to really meet what's coming towards you. And it also makes it reduces your immunity, so you're more susceptible to the pandemic. At the beginning of it, I remember saying to the students, we've got two viruses. We've got a coronavirus and we've got a fear virus, and we have to deal with both, and we have to develop an immunity to both.
What about people that can't see that they're scared or don't even recognize that? Where does that come from?
Being cut off from themselves. Yeah. You have to, and then you have to be able to go in. It's very interesting. My son has recently been gone down with coronavirus, and he has a wife and two children, and his wife often has had quite a bit of fear around things, and this has influenced the children, and so the eldest child started to have a panic, and what his wife had to do was really collect herself and say, you can't be afraid, because that'll reduce your immunity. So you have to stand with this. And I just thought that was the most brilliant outcome. That's an exciting outcome and a huge lesson that is coming out of necessity. That's what these times are asking for, that we rise to them. So in this work, in any work, when you sit with someone and you know that it's an interchange and that you're holding the other with a drop of love or a feeling of incredible openness, empathy and love.
And presence.
And presence. Absolutely. Something changes regardless of what you do. Honestly, it is amazing when you hold with that attitude and you really are attuned to the other. Something amazing happens. And I had an experience of this. I had a fellow come to see me. He rang me and said, and didn't introduce, I can't even remember, couldn't remember his name, because he introduced himself by all his pathologies. And he said, I've been diagnosed with bipolar, with schizoid behaviour, with various other things, and then various physical things. And he said, I'm seeing a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and a caseworker. I said, why do you want to come and see me? You know, I mean, you want to add another one? He said, I want a different approach. I really am looking for something that puts it all together, that's more holistic. I said, okay, come along. So he came in and I knew I wasn't going to enter into all his pathologies because they're symptoms of something wanting to express itself. I want to know what wants to express itself through him. And I was so interested and could feel the way he came in. He was really burdened by his pathology and his situation, and he was a real victim of it. And he came in and he sat down and we started talking, and I started to ask him just questions, you know, about himself, and met him and asked then, you know, but you go, well, what's going on? He said, well, you know, when I was a child, I was really bullied at school. And also my father was a real bully, and he gave me examples of how his father had really treated him badly, and his mother and sister had been present. You know, that's a double whammy. He's being witnessed to be really humiliated, and he went into high school and the bullying went on, and it went on, and he was actually very bright. He also, when he was 14, it was so interesting, a number of things happened to him in 7-year cycles. When he was 14, he felt desperate, and he one day went out and set a forest afire, which of course is a very countercultural thing to do. But you imagine the energy in him and the desire in him to do something to break out of this oppression, and the anger was met with the flames. Well, fortunately for him, he didn't end up in a juvenile detention centre, heaven forbid, but he went to a psychiatric unit for a while at 14. Anyway, came out and he went on with school, and he then started going to university, and he was doing an agricultural course or a horticultural course. And he was doing very well with it. But he then, as he started to do that, he felt really upset at being the one who's always bullied. And he thought, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to learn to fight, and I'm going to go and I'm going to punch people up. I'm going to be on the other side. So he did, and he went to the worst pubs in Sydney, and he picked fights, and he won. But soon he realised that wasn't a satisfactory solution either. Now, how amazing is that? And then he went on and he threw himself right into his horticultural work, and he was doing extremely well. But then when he was 28, he had a sort of nervous breakdown. He sort of overdone himself. And that's when all the psychiatric treatment started. And I saw him when he's 42, you know. Another couple of 7-year cycles had gone by. And he was not doing much. He was finding his way with life, some sort of, you know, but still pretty depressed. Anyway, listening to him, things started to really move. I could feel him, something moving. And then He told me how he'd been to hospital for an operation and he came home and he had to rest for 3 months. And I thought, because I'm a bit of a doer, I thought, how did you manage that? You must. And this is just coming from myself. This is part of the process. What's going on in me? And I noticed, wow, how did you cope with that? I'd find that really hard. And so I said that to him. I said, what do you mean? Bored. I'm not bored. I never get bored. I said, oh, how come? I mean, it's fascinating. It's great. And he says, well, I've got all them to talk to. Oh, have you? Who are they? He said, oh, they're all there. There's lots of them. And they've got lots of conversation. And I thought, okay. I understand some of the diagnosis, but I didn't buy into it. I said, what are they talking about? He said, well, all sorts of things, but there's 2. And they're always fighting. Drives me nuts. I spend all my time trying to stop them fighting. And I said, what do you think the essence of their fighting is about? And he stopped and he really looked at me and he really thought about it and he said, oh, I'll have to think about that. And that was the end of the session and he went away. He came back the next time, a really different person. He really came, he was no longer stooped and depressed. He had a lightness about him. He came in, he was actually shining. And he said, I've discovered what's bottom. I got to the essence of it. He said, they don't need to argue anymore. They're 2 sides of the same coin. One says this, the other. Oh, they're talking about the same thing. And then he realised that's actually what's been going on in him. It was amazing. And all I did was ask a few questions and be present, really present, holding the whole space, knowing this is going somewhere where it needs to go, but I don't know what it is. And out of that came this amazing transformation.
And how wise was he in his own process to come to that?
Yes, as everybody is, actually. As everybody is. Yeah. They know, we don't. So that's how we apply this model. And know that there is a wisdom, there is an organising principle that's working through everybody, through all times, everywhere. Is present. All we've got to do is plug into it and trust and open to it and learn the skills and do the inner work for ourselves to be able to be really present, know what's us, know what's them, bring it in, hold the space in a loving, kind, open, not knowing way and keep up with the process and watch the signals and hold a person gently when they get to an edge and they'll move. It is profound. That's the Metavision Model, applying process-oriented psychology of Arnold Mindell and many other people of wisdom.
That's beautiful. I think with students coming in, they find it difficult sometimes to have that trust and that let go. Well, we want to pathologize everything. Naturally, human nature, we want to fix things. We have to get out of our own way. Sometimes. So
we're also so deeply steeped in the expert knowing the answers and also having an outcome. But it's not for us to have an outcome.
I actually find it liberating not to have to know the answers and know that the client actually has their own wisdom.
It's so much more alive. Isn't it? And fresh.
Yeah,
and unexpected.
Mm-hmm. It makes the work so much more exciting.
Much more.
And you don't know where it's going to go as well. So I just love that part of the Metavision model too. And it's such a feeling space. And also it's not just that, it's relying on the client's feedback.
And it's not just a feeling space. It's a feeling space and a knowing of the structure and the signals and the tools and the skills and knowing when to knowing how to hold them and then let them go. It's also being able to read the signals.
Yes. But then also coming back to the client.
Always.
And asking the questions too if you're not really sure in that moment, because we're relying on also knowing all of what you said is really important, the structure, the signals, but also coming back and asking the client. I don't know, I find that part exciting.
Wonderful.
It's so dynamic. Yeah.
It's very dynamic. I think that's a essence of the Metavision approach, but not only the Metavision approach, it's in process-oriented psychology. What we do at Metavision is put that into a particular context. And Arnold Mindell, the founder of process-oriented psychology, has used quantum physics to put his work into a big context, into an energetic context as well. It's wonderful.
Beautiful.
Inspiration, yes.
And it's always alive. It's always a moving. It's not fixed.
No.
Great, lovely, thank you.
Thank you.